Okay, this was a cone 5 stoneware firing. I have some pieces from the last firing too that I'm going to show, which was also a cone 5. But if you see here, I have some new stuff. I've had some slip for a long time, like a long time, probably like, I don't know, 6 or 7 years now. I used to do some slip casting, but nothing too serious anyways. Kind of like random because I used to do like markets and shows, and I needed some like things to hang up, and it's kind of what I like about slip casting is it's kind of like a multitask thing. Like you can just pour some molds while you're throwing or doing something else, and then you know come back to the molds again. So it makes life easy. And I've made molds before and stuff, but so I got some molds anyway. That's the story. These that and they're stuck. They're all stuck. They are Cerulean by Laguna is the glaze. I kind of knew that it would run. Honestly, it's so thick. This was out of the jar, and the only cerulean I've ever used before was in the studio where I learned how to make pottery, and it was done, a dry mix in a bucket. So anytime you use out of the jar, the consistency, and I've actually never used Laguna glaze out of a jar before, and it was thick, and it was really hard to tell how much. But it looks good. It's just they're stuck, and there's not really that much kiln shelf down there. So I don't know what kind of mess I'm going to be in for. I had a feeling it was going to turn out because these are, can't really tell probably, but they're pretty thin. The slip, I ended up deflocculating it, so it would make better castings, but they all stuck. I had a feeling, but it's a mess. I don't know if it'll be worth even grinding them off. The glaze is nice though, I have to say. Probably could have done just a really really thin coat of it up here. This was like one coat, and then here you can see where it's kind of dripped out of the eyes, where it kind of builds up when you're brushing. It definitely ran there. So the molds are by a company called Hot Cakes on Etsy. They have a store. I think they have their own website. And these were slip cast molds that I made. Um, kind of, there's a method that this guy Ceramic Jim shows where you basically throw on the wheel the mold that you're going to use, and that's what I did. And I'll put a link to that. I'm not that happy with the pots. They're just like little planters that I did, and it was more of a test. Let me show you what the mold looks like, though. Hold on. These are just massive. They're pretty large. So that probably was that. That's how much shrinkage you get with slip casting. He shows this how to do this. You basically throw like a shell, like a big shell, and you throw your form on the inside. And I cut the feet so it would be more interesting. But you then pour plaster in, and it's done this way. So basically, what is your mold is there, and you've made this big shell that you've thrown on the outside out of all of clay, of course. Then you pour this in, the plaster. It's very interesting. It's a good idea. It's hard to do, but it's a good idea. This is just one I didn't like how it came out. I wanted a sample of what the cerulean looks like. And by the way, this slip is called Grits. It's by Laguna. It's kind of speckled. I don't know if it'll show up too well. It's like a mildly speckled buff stoneware. It's actually really good, but I've had it forever and I just want to do something with it. So now I've got all these stuck pots to deal with. There's one that isn't. Got one. But cerulean's nice. It's it really shows the texture. So from the last firing, let me show you. I tested on, this is my speckled, heavily speckled 608 clay, which is this, it's the same clay. Because I don't use hardly any glazes other than white anymore for this clay because it kind of eats glaze. So this is Fairy Rose, which is by Coyote. And this is out of the jar. I'm not an out of the jar glaze type of person, but it gets crazy after a while trying to make glaze or buy glaze in a bucket. I mean, the prices of these glazes have gone so high now. I mean, I know you pay more when you buy it from a jar, but you know, if you're gonna get a bucket of glaze, you really need to make sure that you're gonna be using it because you can't see over here, but I have a lot of buckets of glaze, mostly that I've made. So the pink one is Fairy Rose, and by the way, I did it on. This is a different clay. This is High Water Red Rock. Has specks. So it's a nice glaze, but very hard to get even coverage. And that's just me because I don't really do paint out of a jar on glaze very well. The inside is better coverage, and then on the outside, one of the problems is as you're brushing these type of pots, you know, it can build up as you're brushing it in here, which is fine. It's just I did more of a dabbing on and did I think 3 coats. Still got it bleeding through. You know, the clay coming through. So I don't know. I thought about refiring it. I probably should have in this firing, but I forgot about it completely. And I also tested Coyote Amethyst on this clay. It's a nice purple, but it's kind of like anemic looking. It doesn't have a lot of interest to it. So, and by the way, it might be a little bit dark right here because my overhead light went out and I didn't get a new one. They're LED lights, but hopefully it's not too dark. It's fine. You know, it's a fine glaze. It's nothing to get excited about. I just was looking for some brighter colors to do some paint on work. Maybe more like sculptural stuff. And also in the last firing, I don't have any larger examples. I tried this technique called Cuerda Seca, which is the dry rope technique that, you know, like Spanish tiles used to be done in. So I've been trying to do this for years now. So I kind of gave up because what they do, see the black lines, hopefully it'll pick this up. The black lines repel the glaze, so it needs to be oil based or wax based. And it's like a mystery what Cuerda Seca wax used to be. I know Aftosa makes one. I've never ordered that. I have some other brand over there. So basically what I ended up doing was making my own, which is this is my like second or third attempt to do this. There's a channel called AnasClayHouse, which I've watched for a long time. I don't even think I was subscribed to it or YouTube kicked me out of it or something. I don't know, but she came up with a recipe of how to do this. I was very, very skeptical that this was going to work. It is black iron oxide with sesame oil. She said sesame oil. You could use other oils, but I thought I'm just going to do what she does. And also Frit, and it's Frit 3124. And I'm not going to tell you really the recipe because I'm just going to put the link to her channel. And you can find it on there because it's kind of still a little bit mysterious. It doesn't really matter how much of each thing you put in, only in that it should be like the consistency of ink, like a thicker ink. And I painted this on with a real thin brush, and it's like a nail brush or something that came with, I think it came with a set of, I don't know, stylus tools or something. And I thought I'd never use it, but you need a real thin brush. So the thing about this is that it was fired, you know, it's a test how it was fired up. This is all stroke and coat, and I'm not the biggest stroke and coat fan in the world. But you have to use something that's very stable because all of this glaze is piped out. So it gets piped out of small bottles with like a thin applicator. And you know, you do it this way and then it dries and it will go over this black line a little bit when you're doing it because you can't be that precise. And on Anna's channel, she said, well, it will repel. during the firing. I was so skeptical. I thought there's no way it's going to come out, but you can see how crisp and clear those lines are. So there's a lot of potential, and I could see using this kind of glaze too. This, any type of sort of matte or crystal forming type of glaze would probably work. It does need to be pretty stable if you're going to do it vertical, but it is mostly used for tile work, which, you could do decorative plates or something like that too. But nice on mugs. I haven't done too much with it so far. I did a couple things, some larger pieces that I don't have here, but it is very interesting. And you can, transfer patterns and stuff just like you would with any other surface decoration. So that is called Cuerda Seca, and that's very promising. I'm going to put the link to Anna's channel in the description, okay? And the rest of the stuff in here is my regular speckled white. This is orchid pot. Most of what I have in here has to be packaged up and shipped out. This actually has a small crack in it. Very rarely do I ever get a crack in this Laguna 608 clay. Very rarely, and that was there at the bisque, so I knew that was probably going to happen. So I will unload this top part, and I don't think there's a lot of interesting stuff in here because it's going to be all speckled white, but we'll talk about it. Be right back. Okay, so I ended up unloading some of the stuff that was things that I've shown many times. I have sponge holders, a lot of sponge holders. This stuff actually is hotter than I thought, and I was going to show, the top cone 5, and more orchid planters. And I always put a cone in this middle section. I do 3 cones usually. This kiln is a 3-zone. It has 3 thermocouples, so it's usually pretty consistent. If anything, the bottom will be the coolest section usually. That's pretty typical. So it's a lot of the same stuff. Let's see what's on the next one. Okay, I just been unloading. It's a lot of the same stuff, but I have spoon rest there. It's getting warm as I get down here. It's not too bad. I mean, I can hold it, but after a while it gets a little annoying. So I ended up making different size spoon rests this time because somebody asked for some smaller ones. So hopefully it's the right size. It's always difficult doing special orders for sizes because, as we know, clay shrinks as it dries. And it does shrink at a predictable rate, but I usually find it's very difficult to get the size correct. So it's an ongoing battle to do that, because it depends on the moisture in the clay. It depends on whether you hit cone 5 where you might have went hotter because it'll shrink more. Sometimes with flat items like this, it's much more difficult. It's like the shrinkage is different. I don't know. There's probably science to it. But anyways, I have to measure these to see if they're right. See what happened there. So, and the other thing is the next kiln opening will probably be, I think, a terracotta, a low fire. I got, when I went down to my clay supplier, I usually order a pallet instead, but I actually went there. I got this low fire glaze, which is moonlight, which it's gold. They had the samples in the store, so that makes it so much easier. For whatever reason, moonlight looks more gold than gold does. So it says cone 05, which that's the most annoying thing about low fire glazes to me, is that the range is like, it'll sometimes say 05, 04, or it'll say it's like an 06 to 04, but this one just says 05. So has anybody used this like at 04? Because that's what I'm gonna do. That's what I pretty much have to do. A lot of people say that low fire glazes will do a much wider range than what the companies usually put on them, but I don't know that much about them. I know that stoneware glazes will do that, but they'll run or they'll shift color. So I'm gonna do one more shelf and we'll see what we have. Okay, so this is the cone from the bottom shelf. By the way, I have an L&L kiln. Um, Anytime you see these channels here, that's an L&L thing. And they're great to have, but if you bump into them with something, and like they're, I guess zirconium or whatever. So if you hit the kiln shelf on them, the kiln shelf will usually chip. So they're strong, but that's, that's how they're meant to be. So on the bottom, I have mostly the salt cellars. I have some that have salt on it. The lids are already unloaded. I didn't show that. This glaze I've shown before is Laguna oatmeal. It's a pretty easy glaze to use, but I'm finding that the thicker it is, the better, which I did not know for a long time that it should be thicker, because I used to always get this, it has specks in it. Can you see that? I assume that they're ilmenite specks or something, but I don't know, because they're different colors. I don't know how they make these glazes, but a lot of times the specks would build up on the bottom. I mean, like when you dip this in your glaze and you pour it out, you get like a lot of the specks there. Some of the Mako glazes are like that. They're crystal glazes. You get this like huge mass that it looks terrible, but for some reason, I never use this glaze thick. I usually would keep it at like a 1.4 specific gravity. But it seems like it does better. I don't know what the specific gravity of it is right now. And I've noticed that it's thicker, but in the last couple firings, it's been coming out really nice. So it's interesting because for years I didn't keep it thicker because I was always worried that it would look worse thicker than thinner because it's matte and it doesn't move. It's more of a satin glaze actually. But the fact of the matter is it actually looks way better thicker. So I'll have to take the specific gravity if I can. I doubt a lot of people use this glaze, but it's pretty nice. I have to say it's one of my favorite glazes for commercial glazes. And what I will say, because I have tested it for a long time, it will stain. So it's not a good liner glaze for any kind of mugs or anything. You definitely will get coffee and tea stains inside the mugs. So that's kind of a bummer on this glaze because it looks better to me on its own on one piece instead of like on the outside than a liner glaze. It just looks better dipped. So I don't know. Maybe if it's thicker, it won't stain the way that it has been. And then I probably didn't say, but my white glaze that I use, I make that. And that's called Studio White, which you can find on glazing. I've as many times as I've made it, I couldn't even tell you exactly what's in it. I know that the ingredients are easy to get. And I say that because now that, Gersley borate no longer exists, and that's a newsflash for anybody if you haven't heard that. Laguna's been saying, no, we have Gersley borate, but they didn't. I don't know what. They've created like a substitute, basically. So that's probably what their plan was the whole time. I don't think there's Gersley borate in it. If it is, it's a very small amount. And the other thing that doesn't exist anymore is Custer feldspar. So I don't know, and this clay, by the way, is called Raise Smooth. It's made by Laguna, but I think it's only made by the Laguna supplier that I get it from. They now no longer make it. They've discontinued it. It's the best white clay I've ever used, of course. And I fully depended on them continuing to make this because I thought, why would they ever not want to make this clay? Because it's like a million times better than B-Mix. I don't know why everybody buys B-Mix, but I used to use B-Mix and had problems like everybody cracking, and it just, you have to slow dry. I don't slow dry this at all. I probably have had like one or two cracks with Raise Smooth. I guess there's no point in me telling you now because it doesn't exist. They said I could order 2,000 pounds of it as a special order. I'm thinking that maybe it has Custer feldspar in it, or maybe it had, I don't know what else it could be. EPK would had a shortage too. So I don't know why they made that decision. If it's just people buy B-Mix instead and they didn't know about Raise Smooth, but in any event, it no longer is made. So I'm now going back to one of their other clays, we'll talk about it another time because I'll have to be using it soon. It's hard to find a white clay that doesn't crack very easily. And this Raised Smooth was great. I loved it. So, bummer on that. And the rest of the stuff in there is just a repeat. I have these without salt on the front. Next time, hopefully, is going to be the low fire one, like I said. And by the way, I don't know if I said, but they sell these to be jars, and you would put a cork there. But I'm doing them as planters, little planters. So the fact that it's stuck, I can probably just grind it. It won't really affect anything. But if it'll hold up, it's a very strong slip. So anyways, talk to you next time. Thank you for watching.